Hey folks, I'm Mike. This is KEI Fabrication. 2.5 years ago, we pulled what was left of this vintage open wheel NASCAR modified out of the woods, and we've begun the resurrection process. Here we are 45 years later, and this car is extremely close to returning to the track. I hope you like this stuff. Follow along, like, share, and subscribe, and go on the journey with us. Alright guys and gals, this is the day after the car show. The car show was great, however we did have some negative impact due to the weather. So I think the initial car count was a little bit off just because the forecast was definitely for pop-up showers and rain, and as it turned out, right about the time it was over and ready to load up the cars, it poured. So the car got drenched for probably a good 20 minutes in a steady, heavy downpour. You can see remnants of some of the rust on the bare metal. As soon as I brought it home, I used the air hose to try and shed all the water off, and then I sprayed it with light oil. All this fresh sheet metal had a light coating of oil on it, but it did, I don't know if you can see it, but it's got a tiny tinge of orange to it. And then I sprayed it with oil, so it shouldn't be a problem. But anyway, it was a great show. I'm glad that I did the 18-hour push to get as far along as we did. And some great conversations, some great opportunities to share the story. And we've got another major event that I'm going to try to make 1 week. Well, it's only 5 days away now. That I really am going to just focus on trying to get the car as complete as possible, and Lord willing, running and driving under its own power. So the back of the car, from just in front of the rear axle to the back bumper, is pretty good. I wouldn't hesitate to make some test laps in it just the way it is. The middle of the car really just needs the firewall completed. I don't know if you can see it, but I've got the firewall a little over halfway up, and then there'll be another transition to this little angle strip that I tack welded to the back of this. Now this was super flimsy. I tack welded this in place, both at the bottom. It's a little L piece that I made out of sheet metal and then over bent it. So what I'm planning on doing is coming down and overlapping this, and then coming up and kind of being flush with this. So I want the air to escape. It's going to begin its transition out of what comes through the cockpit, up this deck, and then turn again and come out the back window. Years and years ago, especially with the small rear window coupes, this rear window has actually been enlarged back in the 60s. But a lot of them actually drilled big holes back here to get the air not be trapped in it. So these guys back in the late 50s all the way up to the mid 60s with the coupes and the sedans, if you find some old photographs of them, you'll see that they do what's referred to as Swiss cheese. They drill holes anywhere air could get trapped. So my job is to try to provide the path of least resistance to get the air out of the the cockpit, like I need to really be worried about that. I keep having to remind myself that the purpose of the car is for exhibition and parade laps. But the racer in me won't let me not mess around with stuff like that. So I'm going to begin the process of trying to get some of the temporary stuff redone and make it a permanent situation. And because I've worked from basically just the head of the rear axle backward, I'm going to kind of do from the firewall forward, except in reverse. I'm going to go from the front bumper back. So I'm going to take the radiator out. I've got to change the water pump. I don't know if you guys will be able to see this, but the old water pump's got a little wobble in it. I have a new aluminum pump to replace that. I've got another water outlet that is straight, so the hose can go from here to there. I've got a new fuel pump, and I also have a new radiator hose to go from the radiator outlet down low up there. And let's see, I've got some temporary bolts in the steering linkage that I need to replace with the correct length bolts and nylock nuts. So I really want to, it's going to be an 11th hour crunch to get this car moving around under its own power. I just want to get as much as I can done so I don't have to go back and say, oh, did I change the bolts out in the steering, or did I tighten this, or does it have the correct bolts in that? The majority of the front end is good. I got all grade 8 bolts with nylock nuts on a lot of places, so there's only a few that need to be addressed, but I don't want to get in a situation where I forget or neglect it. So then we'll start focusing on all of the other things that need to be done. The last thing I'm going to do is fill the doors up with door bars, because I got a lot of work to do still on the inside, so I'm not going to keep climbing over them. Part of the push on Saturday to get ready for the car show on Sunday was I needed to put this door bar in. Let me get some light on the subject. Hold on. Alright, we're back. So I had to put this door bar in before I put this sheet metal in, because I had to weld the back side of that connection, then put the sheet metal in. I had to get this in before I put this in because I wanted it to overlap, and the flange is right here. But this is tacked in place now. These floor plans are tacked in place, and same thing with the driver's side. I threw the seat in to make the car look more complete. So my methodology for the sheet metal was all of the seat belt mounting locations and seat bolt locations are above the floor pan, including behind the seat. The shoulder harness tabs are on this side of the cockpit, protected from, you know, anything bad that happens back there. So worked hard to try to make that happen, and it was marginally successful, so I'm okay with that. Again, so what needs to happen other than a good solid nut and bolt? There's still the big three. I've got to plumb it for fuel, plumb it for brakes, and I've got to wire it. Fortunately, those systems are relatively simple, and I've got all brand new stuff to do it. So I will begin that list of things to do right after I kind of get the nuts and bolts situated here. Again, get the water pump changed, and at some point I would like to get coolant in the system. I really don't have a whole lot of history on this motor. I've only ran it temporarily for maybe 2 or 3 minutes total, so I have no idea, you know, even for just a parade lap or two, you know, is it going to hold together even that long. I have no idea. As far as the health of the engine, I have an oil pressure gauge on it, I'm not all that impressed with what I saw. I'm kind of hoping that it is just a bad gauge or a faulty gauge. Yeah, I'm going to go with that. So other than that, we're going to be ready to go racing this weekend. One of the cool accomplishments over the push to get it to that car show was this is the first time the car has had the springs active in the suspension. Up to this point, there was 3-inch high spacer blocks between the axle tube and the frame on both sides, and I was able to get all of the nuts and bolts in the suspension. This is after the rear end was fully welded, and got my shackles in place. I estimated what the leaf spring stack should be. I've got the main leaf plus the longest leaf, the longest secondary leaf. The longer the leaves are, the softer they are in spring rate. And on this side I have 3 leaves. I've got the longest secondary leaf, and then the next longer secondary leaf in the stack. By design, the left rear is one of the heaviest corners of the car. It is the heaviest in the rear, and the goal is to try to get the right front and the left rear close to the same weight. So the fact that I've got that much spring in it, and the car is holding itself off the ground at nearly the correct ride height. You can see my jack and bolt there is got plenty of adjustment left in it to raise it or lower it. Same thing with the passenger side. So it's kind of neat to set it on the ground, and I estimated where it would be, and I just put about 3 or 4 turns into the left rear jack and bolt. To go to the show, I had too little. I had a clearance between the tire and the fender way too close. You could never race it like that. So I just jacked it up to get it more realistic, and I'm very happy with the way the car sits. I've got plenty of suspension travel between the frame and the axle. The ride height back here is pretty cool, and that was a major accomplishment. And I wish I could test the suspension, but you know, jump it up and down on it and things. But anyway, I've got so much to do, I don't even have time to play with it. There'll be plenty of time to worry about that in the future. I've got my 4-link bars kind of set just as a very conservative, almost neutral position. So it should just try driving the car forward without trying to make it lift or dive or anything like that. And it's set up the same on both sides. The lower bars are parallel with the ground at ride height, so again, conservative. I got the panhard rod set in the middle, so I'm starting more neutral than anything else. First time all this stuff went down the road fully active, well, I say down the road, bouncing on the trailer and rolling around, so pretty excited. I got the drive shaft painted white. That's installed. The bolts are tight, so that's a rule. The drive shaft has to be painted white, so if it flies out from under the car, the drivers behind you can see it, or the starter or the officials that are watching the race can see that there's debris on the track, especially at nighttime racing. So the fuel cell is installed. I threw some bolts in the cover to hold it in position, but I do have to make some box tubing straps. I've got to make a battery hold down, and I've got all the hardware to do that. It's just a matter of me shutting my mouth and getting to work. So that's what I'm going to do. to clean up all those surfaces. I'm going to hold off on putting the water pump on until I get some of there's some welding now that the radiator is out that I need to finish up, and we'll go from there. The other thing I'm going to do is pull the header off of the passenger side. I've got one tube just underneath it that comes into the frame. The header's off. I can easily weld all the way around the top side, so I'm going to do that next. There. Just finished rebuilding the engine. Alright gang, it's time to come clean. It's New Year's Eve. I know I haven't posted any videos in like 2 months for the old number 7. The video that I am releasing today actually talks about getting ready to go to a race in a day or two. It's not necessarily a race, it was a vintage night for the antique race cars to be on display and do parade laps at the Waterford Speed Bowl in Waterford, Connecticut. We were trying our hardest to get this thing there as far along as it could be, and disaster struck. My wife fell the night before, and we were going to pull an all-nighter that night. My boys were coming down and we were going to just knock this thing out as far as we could go. And during the day while I was at work, my wife tripped and fell and she shattered her right shoulder. I literally, just had to drop the tools, and this garage stayed dormant for more than 2 months. So that was a major, major deal that, our family had to get through. My wife is 90% recovered. She's got all of her motion back. She had to have a full replacement done on her shoulder. She's got all of her motion back, and through her physical therapy, she is now working on regaining her strength. So thank God the progress is good, and it is targeted towards being a complete and full recovery. So praise God for that. Okay, back to the number 7. That's the reason why I haven't been posting videos. And what I'm trying to do is show you that we're making some good progress. We've gotten back in the shop in the last week or 2, and what little time that I've been able to spend in here, I've had some specific projects that I tried to knock out. So you can look forward to videos to bring you up to date on some of these things that have been completed. So thanks for your patience. That's an update. I hate excuses, but life happens and it gets in the way. And obviously taking care of my wife and my family was the #1 priority. So I look forward to 2024, getting more work done on the modified. And hopefully you continue to support the channel and give me a thumbs up if you feel as though the videos are worthy. And God bless all of you. Have a happy new year. Enjoy it with your families. And my prayer is that your 2024 is the best ever. And let's share that together. So like, subscribe, comment, and I'll start more regularly releasing videos. I've got the content. It's just finding the time to edit it and post it. Thanks again. Happy New Year, gang.